You know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to finish Paradise Lost, the first book. And then maybe we'll get into the second one. Or I'm going to take a passage here from the introduction of Shake Hands with the Devil. Now, normally I don't talk about the propaganda of spirituality, because that exists in itself. You know, as again, the propaganda is weaponized artwork. And it's an assault, it's a repetition, it's a hijacking of the person and the human soul. And there's always been that debate within classical literature about what the human soul is and what its constituency is, or what constitutes it, what its very makeup. What is the soul? But if you want to go by modern day interpretations, I remember this. There's a scientific paper out there. It's a bit wishy-washy, right? And it was measuring the electrical current of the person and their fields, their energy fields generated around the person. Because that's actually what happens, is because, well, you have iron in your blood and it circulates. And as is by the heat map, you can tell when you point an infrared camera at somebody what their emotions are. It's scientific. It is proven. And, there's a lot of grounds for spirituality. There's a reason why it exists. If you want to go by other things, correlations, say like the Plains principle, the Great Plains, in that, the Savannah theory, right, where individuals didn't necessarily need to interact with each other because of intelligence and because of the use of electromagnetic perception, or ESP, as they call it. Some people call it psychic or whatever. But frankly, again, other people call it spirituality. And like, if you hear a voice in your head, then that's the Holy Spirit. And if you're in communion with other people, then you're of the same wavelength, right? And this is where, the theories of holistic medicine and energy healing come from. Again, it's all about the wavelength. That's what the hippies were talking about in the 1960s and on the psychedelics. It's all about the waves, man. It's all about the waves, Yo, chill, dude. Your aura's like freaking on fire. Yo, chill. Get some green in you, man. Like, whoa. Oh, jeez. Where you been, man? You've been a tortured soul. Holy. Now the other thing is that when you go to the metaphysics, or not the metaphysics, but the quantum mechanics, or the very nature that is the construction of atoms, right? So quarks and quarks, the Higgs boson, and so on and so forth. The microcosm of matter and physical existence in itself. Then it's that principle that as is the micro, so is the macro, right? So what is small is then large, right? In repetition, in an ever increasing pattern. That is the the golden rule, right? Golden principles of sacred geometry, right? 2, 3, 1, so on and so forth. I don't remember all of it right now, because obviously I'm doing this like off the cuff. Excuse me. And having just gone for my walk. So there's many different ways to spirituality, and of course this is very interesting. I'm saying this on a Sunday. And what you speak into existence comes to be, right? That's the idea behind manifestation, right? That's why we have churches and we have lectures, and we humanity enjoys singing, right? To bring the vibration into the air and into the water, right? Hence the principle of baptism, right? Baptism is to equalize the person from the negative energies and go back to the Schumann resonance. Because the earth vibrates, because it's made of minerals, and it has a molten iron core that circulates, right? These are all things that are observable. So don't just take my word for it. Go out there and look for it, because the history of propaganda around this stuff is hide it, shine. Don't let it shine, right? We can't let these people know the entire nature of the spirituality, because we're up top, right? And we don't want our congregation or our sheep to figure out how to actually act on their own. We need their resources and so on and so forth. We need their goals. We need them to contribute to the church. The thing is that true Christianity or any other true religion doesn't need resources. It doesn't need greed and gluttony and wealth. What it needs is people and community. It's the very definition. The church, right? A square over a triangle. In a triangle, an equilateral triangle, right? Like there's a reason for this geometry. There's a reason why it exists. And then a square in a triangle. Very interesting, isn't it? You know, or you get a flipped, you get a trapezoid, so two triangles flipped, right? Right, so like this, and then the square, right? That and then we talk about things like the cross itself, in which Jesus was crucified, is like this, and the energy field goes like this out of the wood, because magnetism is one of the very basic principles of the physical existence, right? And as I said, all everything from the micro scales up to the macro, right? All matter is energy distilled to a very slow vibration, and there's low frequency and high frequency, right? And this is where people talk about 5G and so on and so forth, and how it's disruptive. And there's people out there that are extremely sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. They can't even be anywhere near cell phones or cell towers or anything like that. And that's why they live close to radio observatories, because there is examples in nature as to electromagnetic sensory. And you look at hammerhead sharks. That's the best example. They have sensory organs, right, that connect to their very skin, right, the ends of the nerves, because the nervous system is the extension of the brain, right? And so when you have a chopping of a limb or something so like that, or some sort of trauma, that's why you go into shock, because it's a feedback, right? It's a grounding that wasn't supposed to happen, like getting electrocuted. This is the truth of the matter, and this truth again has been hidden by the propaganda. No, you can't see this. You can't see this. No. Make sure this guy doesn't say anything of this on YouTube. He's way too conspiratorial. We can't have him waking up so soon. Absolutely unbelievable. You see? Okay, so the story of Samson and Delilah, right, is about how his hair allowed him to have superiority, right? Because the hair is part of the nervous system, right? In mammals and so on and so forth. It allows, if your hair stands on end and whatnot, that's a signifier of, there being something that might attack you, or creepiness, right? The goosebumps principle, right? Do you remember the books? Because I do. Yeah, just a bit of acting right there. Now, naturally, I'm wearing my India Koi staff sweater here. And what I say doesn't represent what the military and what cadets stands for. This is entirely my own opinion, and I must say, as I said before, I have no immediate affiliation with the military, any of its groups, or the Royal Canadian Legion at this time. It's just we are completely separate. What I do is completely my own responsibility and my own actions, and it has no reflection of that. So, what do you say we get back into this? I think it's a good idea. Good idea. I'm going to put my feet up here like a fireside chat, and we're going to finish this, because, there's human sacrifice going on in the world. Anyway, the age of innocence is over. A lot of people don't even understand that, okay, you think about the Maya, the Inca, and so on and so forth, when the harvesting of the crops started to, or the crop harvest, started to have famine and pestilence, so disease spread amongst their people. due to a lack of nutrition and so on and so forth. They started sacrificing people. And then it got worse and worse and worse because of the energy and the shock to the collective system. Then previous cultures knew about this energy connection between people. And this is why I'm not really a fan of mysticism. This corruption of worship. I'm not in complete agreement because there's different wavelengths, right? To be a conduit for, right? And the energy that I wish to be a conduit for is the Creator, Jesus Christ, and God the Savior, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Because that's the Holy Trinity. Right? I grew up Pentecostal when, as I've said before, little bits of hints. Born in Ajax, grew up in Barrie, lived on a farm in Oro, and then moved here to London. And then I've been all over the country since then, coast to coast. And now, if I'm going to make a further tangent with this, I would love to go to the Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and Nunavut to work there, and complete my grand tour, along with PEI, for which I haven't been there yet to work. Otherwise, again, I've been all across this country, coast to coast, multiple times. Okay, so where were we yesterday? I'm using this as a bookmark here. A little souvenir. Okay, line 565. Let's start there. Of warriors old with ordered spears and shield, awaiting what command their mighty chief had to impose. He threw the armed files, darts his experienced eye, and soon traversed the whole battalion views, their order due, their visages and stature of gods, their numbers last he sums, and now his heart distends with pride and hardening in his strength. Glories for never since created man met such embodied force as named with these, could merit more than that small infantry, warped on by cranes through all the giant brood of Phlegra with the heroic race were joined that fought at Thebes and Ilium, on each side mixed with auxiliar gods, and what resounds in fable or romance of Uther's son, begrit with British and Amoric knights, and all who since baptized or infidel jousted in Asperon or Montalban, Damasco or Morocco or Trebizond, or whom Bizerta sent from Afric's shore, when Charlemagne with all his peerage fell, by Fonterrabia, thus far these beyond compare of mortal prowess, yet observed their dread commander, he above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminate, stood like a tower, his form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun new risen looks through the horizontal misty air, shorn of his beams, or from behind the moon in dip eclipse disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations, and with fear of change perplexes monarchs. Darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel, but his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek, but under brows of dauntless courage, and considered pride, waiting revenge, cruel his eye, but cast signs of remorse and passion, to behold the fellows of his crime, the followers rather, for other once beheld in bliss, condemned forever now to have lost in pain millions of spirits for his fault immersed of heaven, and from eternal splendor flung, for his revolt, yet faithful how they stood, their glory within, as when heaven's fire hath scathed the forest oaks or mountain pines, with sing top on their stately ground through bare, stand on the blasted heath. He now prepared to speak, where at their double ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclosed him round with all his peers. Attention held them mute. Thrice he essayed, and thrice in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth. At last, words interwove with sighs found out their way. O myriad of immortal spirits, O powers, matchless, but with the Almighty and with the strife, was not inglorious, though the event was dire, as this place testifies, in the dire change, hateful to utter, but what power of mind, foreseeing or presaging from the depth of knowledge past or present, could have feared? How such united force of gods have such as stood like these could ever know repulse? For who can yet believe through after loss that all the pursuant legions who exile hath emptied heaven shall fail to reascend, self-raised and repose their native seat? For me be witnessed all the hosts of heaven, if counsels different or dangers shunned, by me have lost our hopes. But he who reigns monarchs in heaven, till then, as one secure, sat on his throne, upheld by old repute, consent or custom in his regal state, put forth at full, but still his strength concealed, which tempered our might and wrought our fall. Henceforth his might we know, and know our own, so as not either to provoke or dread. New war provoked, our better part remains, to work in close design, by fraud or guile, what force effected not, that he no less at length from us may find, who overcomes by force, hath overcome but half his foe. Space may produce new words, whereof so rife. There went a fame in heaven that he ere long intend to create, and there implant a generation whom his choice regard should favor equal to the sons of heaven. Thither, if but to pry, shall be perhaps our first eruption, thither or elsewhere. For this infernal spirit shall never hold celestial spirits in bondage, nor the abyss long under darkness cover. But these thoughts, full counsel, must mature. Peace is despaired. But for who can think submission? War, then, war, open or understood, must be resolved. He spake, and to confirm his words, out flew millions of flaming swords, drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. The sudden blaze from far round illuminated hell. Highly they raged against the highest, and fierce with grasped arms clashed on their sounding shields the din of war. Hurling defiance toward the vault of heaven, there stood a hill not far, whose grisly top belched fire and rolling smoke. The rest entire shone with glossy scruff, undoubted sign that in his womb was hid metallic ore, the work of sulfur. Thither winged and speed a numerous brigade hastened, as when bands of pioneers with spade and pickaxe armed forerun the royal camp to trench a field or cast a rampart. Mammon led them on. Mammon, the least erected spirit that fell from heaven, for Evan in heaven, his look and thoughts were always downward bent, admiring more the riches of heaven pavement, trod in gold, than aught divine or holy else enjoyed, in vision beatific by him first. Men also, and by his suggestion taught, ransacked the center, and with impious hands, rifled the bowels of their mother earth for treasures better hid. Soon had his crew opened into the hill a spacious wound, and digged out ribs of gold. Let none admire that riches grow in hell, that soil may best deserve the precious bane. And here let those who boast in mortal things, and wondering tell of Babel, and the works of Memphian kings, learn how their greatest monuments of fame and strength and art are easily outdone by spirits reprobate, and in an hour, what in an age they will with incessant toil and hands innumerable scarce perform, nigh on the plain in many cells prepared, that underneath had veins of liquid fire, sluiced from the lake a second multitude, with wondrous art founded the massy ore, serving each kind and scummed the bouillon dross. A third as soon had performed within the ground a various mold, and from the boiling cells by strange conveyance filled with each hollow nook, as in an organ from one blast of wind. To many a row of pipes and soundboard breaths, Anon out of the earth a fabric huge rose like an exaltation with the sounds of dulcet symphonies and voices sweet. I'm in the middle of something. Built like a temple, where pilasters round were set and Doric pillars overlaid with golden architrave, nor did they want cornice or frieze with bossy sculptures graven. The roof was fretted gold, not Babylon, not great Alcario, such magnificence equaled in all their glories to enshrine Belarus or Sepphoris their god, or seat their kings when Egypt with Assyria strove in wealth and luxury. The ascending pile stood fixed her stately height, and straight the doors, opening their brazen folds, discover wide within her ample spaces, o'er the smooth and level pavement from the arched roof. Pendant by subtle magic may a row of starry lamps and blazing crescents fed, with naphtha and asphaltus yielding light as from a sky. The hasty multitude admiring entered, and the work some praised, and some the architect his hand was known in heaven by many a tower structured high, what sceptred angels held their residence, and sat as princes, whom the supreme king exalted to such power and gave to rule, each in his hierarchy the orders bright. Nor was his name unheard or unadorned in ancient Greece and Ausonian land. Men called him Mulciber, and how he fell from heaven they fabled, thrown by angry Jove. Sheer o'er the crystal battlements from morn to noon he fell, from noon to dewy eve, a summer's day, and with the setting sun, dropped from the zenith like a falling star. On Lemnos, the Aegean isle, thus they relate, erring, for he with this rebellious rout fell long before, nor aught availed him now to have built in heaven high towers, nor did he escape by all his engines, but was headlong sent with industrious crew to build in hell. Meanwhile, the winged heralds by command of sovereign power with awful ceremony and trumpet sound throughout the host proclaim a solemn council forthright to be held at Pandemonium, the high capital of Satan and his peers. Their summon called from every band and squared regiment, by place or choice the worthiest, they anon, with hundreds and with thousands trooping came. Attended all across was thronged the gates and porches wide, but chief the spacious hall. Through like a covered field, where champions bold, wont ride in armed and with the sultan's chair, defied the best of pay and chivalry, to mortal combat or career with lance. Thick swarmed, both on the ground and in the air, brushed with its hiss of rustling wings, and bees, in springtime, when the son of Taurus rides, pour forth their populous youth about the hive. In clusters they among fresh dews and flowers fly to and fro, are on the smooth plain, the suburbs of their straw-built citadel, new rubbed with balm, expiated and comfort. Their state affairs, so thick the airy crowd swarmed and were straightened till the signal given. Behold a wonder! They but now, who seemed in bigness and to surpass earth's giant sons, now less their smallest dwarfs in narrow room throng numberless, like the pigman race, beyond the Indian mount, or fairy elves, whose midnight reveals by forest side or fountain some belated peasant sees, or dreams he sees while overhead the moon stirs arbitress and nears to the earth, wheels her pale course. They on their mirth and dance intent, with jocund music charm his ear. At once, with joy and fear, his heart rebounds, and thus incorporated spirits to smallest forms, reduced their shapes immense, and were at large, though without number still amidst the hall of that infernal court, by far within and their own dimensions like themselves, the great Sephiric lords and cherubim, and close recessed and secret conclave sat, 1,000 demigods on golden seats, frequent and full. After short silence, then and summon read, the great consult began. Better to rule over hell than to serve in heaven, says Satan. I wish not to rule in hell. I wish not to be in hell. Suicide sends us to hell. Sacrifice, human sacrifice, sends us to hell. That's the way to that. Because it just passes on the grief to everybody else. Now, if you think about other mysticism or other spirituality in which torturing people in a negative energy and stealing their souls, like Dr. Sleep, you know, the memory, the genetic memory of trauma is passed on from one person to the next. You think about epigenetic and the theory behind that. And this is where I'm going to correlate this, not causality, correlate this to, the COVID vaccine, because there's a very good chance that synthetic virus, by my theory at least, and assessment, as an amateur doctor, was intended to destroy a certain segment, demographic, and ethnicity of people, to erase the genetic memory and the oral tradition that goes along with them from a different era when things were much harder and we didn't have electronics as to the same capacity that we have them now. Because the wavelength without isolation, as any electrical engineer will tell you, causes interference. No more interference. That's what I have to say. You see this bar, it's the same as a magnet. Different poles. And you see the crown. The crown is a conduit for the head. And heavy is the head that wears the crown. So as the king of the internet, I'm going to tell you right now, cut that fucking shit out. The pedophilia, the human sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and all that stuff. Causing pain to other beings for no particular reason except to drink their blood and to see them suffer is just the worst.